coat or courage? Look at somebody and say, you choose coat or courage. My dear brothers and sisters, what was very valuable in the biblical times, the people of the biblical times, people of old ancient times, always were very meticulous, very peculiar, very careful, if you would, in what they chose to put in their body. Henceforth, the laws that we get from Deuteronomy, they were very, very, very careful of how they presented themselves, how they displayed themselves in front of the public. They were very careful of what they wore, how they talked, how they carried themselves, because they understood that the image was everything. So much was the appearance of them that they had special clothing that signified exactly what they were and who they were at that particular time. My dear brothers and sisters, the clothes, if you would, they had certain uniforms that they would wear while they were in war. They had certain attires that they would wear while they were in the home, certain clothes that they would wear while they were in the street, certain things that they put on that signified who they were and who they were connected to. Arguably, my dear brothers and sisters, one of the most intriguing, most valuable, most significant particles of clothing, if you would, was the coat or the robe that the men wore in that time. Can I get a witness? The coat, the robe, my dear brothers and sisters, symbolized authority. The coat symbolized power. The coat, when put on, told who you were and whose father you were connected to. Whenever someone put on this coat, whenever someone put on this robe, it gave them identity. It gave them purpose. It gave them a sense of being. Consequently, we all know how valuable the coat was. When the prodigal son went out into the street, as soon as he came into himself, his father said, go and get him a coat to put on him so that we could celebrate him coming back home. So significant was the coat. We can all remember that as Jesus lay arguably dormant on the cross, the people, the thieves, the people, the prosecutors, laid there right there at his feet and gambled over his coat. My dear brothers and sisters, this coat gave people, if you would, some type of sense of belonging. This coat gave someone some significance. It told when someone was royal, if you would. But in this text, my dear brothers and sisters, we are introduced to a character that goes by the name of Joseph. Joseph in the text, if you read a little bit earlier in the text, Joseph is given a coat. He's given a robe of many colors by his father. This coat was supposed to symbolize his authority. This coat was supposed to symbolize his power. This coat was supposed to symbolize who he was and who he was connected to. But because he received this coat, his brothers hated him the most. Come here, let me tell you. Have you ever been there, my dear brothers and sisters, when you were presented with something that you did not work for? You were presented with something that you did not deserve, and the thing that was supposed to bring you happiness brought you the most pain. Can I get a witness in this building? The thing that people thought were doing good in your life, the thing that people thought that you would be happy about, now brought you the worst pain. You didn't pray to God to have that voice that you have, but now that you're able to sing in the heavenly tone that you would, everybody wants to hate on you because when you sing, strongholds come down. You didn't ask to come to this church. You didn't ask Dad to pastor this church, but since God placed it in your life, it seems now that the coat that has been put on you has betrayed you. You did not ask to be married to that person, but God sent them to you, and now all hell is breaking loose because what now was supposed to be your covering is now bringing enemies in your way. Well, I came all the way from Morehouse College to inform you this morning that just because people hate on your coat, you gotta wear what God gave you. Because if God gave you the coat, baby, put it on, and you better act wearing my coat. Here it is. He receives the coat, my dear brothers and sisters. He receives the coat from his daddy, and his brothers hate on him. They plot and they decide to sell him into slavery. After selling him into slavery, he is introduced to a man who purchased him by the name of Potiphar. Potiphar raises Joseph up, gets Joseph, puts Joseph inside of the house. Joseph is obedient to dear Potiphar. Potiphar sees how valuable Joseph is, and decides to elevate Joseph to second in command. Notice here in the text, my dear brothers and sisters, that he's elevated. Potiphar tells Joseph, you have access to my money. You have access to my check cards. You have access to my black card. You can have just like T.I. whatever you like. But he says, listen, Joseph, I know you can have everything, but there's one thing that you cannot have, and that is my fine wife. Here it is, Joseph. He says, you cannot have it. Joseph says, okay, man, I can deal with that. I will not touch this woman. But then the fine Potiphar's wife comes along to mess with Joseph. Here it is. Potiphar's wife tells Joseph, listen, that coat that you're wearing, that swag that you have is on level 100. You walk a certain way. You smell a certain way. That thing, and it draws me close to you, not because you have it all together, not because you're fine, but it's because you have the coat, spiritual coat that is covering you, and it draws me closer to you. Can I tell you, child of God, that what attracts people to you is not how much money you have in your pocket. It's not by how you can twist your hair or put a weave in it and curl it, but the thing that draws people to you is your anointing. I dare to look at somebody and say, it's just my coat. It's just my coat. Here it is. Potiphar's wife comes to Joseph and she says, sleep with me. Joseph says, I cannot do it. Can I tell you? The reason why, the first thing Joseph does is he audits his authority. He audits his authority. Here it is. She comes to Joseph, and Joseph denies her incessantly. He says, I cannot do this. But can I tell you the reason why Joseph was able to deny Potiphar's wife? The reason why Joseph was able to deny Potiphar's wife is because he endured the slavery times. In slavery, you are taught to listen to the master. You cannot have what you want. You have to listen to whatever the master tells you to do. When Joseph was going through slavery, this was a time for him to be refined so that when he was elevated into the palace, he was able to deal with some self-control. Can I tell you, child of God, that you think that God was putting you through all that hell? You think that this is a drought that you're experiencing, but God is only treating you and he's putting you up to teach you some discipline. Dad, can I tell you, I'm glad you asked me to preach this morning, because let me speak life over to you. In the midst of everything that's going on right now, you think that you're in slavery, but God is only training you up so that when you get to TBN and when you get to the Word Network and when your ministry flourishes, you can be able to practice some self-discipline. And so when God tells you to do some things, you can learn right now. So when you get elevated, you can be able to control yourself. Here it is. In verse 9, my dear brothers and sisters, Joseph tells the woman, he audits his authority. He says, listen, are you there in verse 9 with me? Verse 9, he says, no one is greater in this house than I am. He audits his authority. He says, listen, I know you're married to this man, but I still have more authority than you do.